What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and we see that there's some uh, red in the market, and it's all, quote unquote, resulting from these Elon Musk tweets we said. I mean, this is something of what he's posting. He said, this meme here right now, I said would be over between us if you quoted another Linkin Park song, but I found someone else. And then he says, it didn't even matter. So it's just little funny things like that, or something like this. I thought this was funny. But he said Dogecoin is made of money with an infinite supply, and then the Federal Reserve. I mean, they're funny, but obviously it's, people assume that it's tanking the market. Whatever the case, this is all a joke. This market is not where it will be. It's legitimate. But things like this is just absurd, even though some of these are funny and true. Anyway, just thought I'd show you guys that so you're aware of what's happening. Now, I wanted to show you this because I think we have a good understanding that CBDCs are coming. But there needs to be sort of a bridge asset or hegemonic currency that sits in between all of it. Now listen to this video by Mark Carney.
Means, but the payment system itself, and how can that be improved? There's a variety of ways that it is being improved, and there's others. But one of the issues, which links back to the speech, is whether or not there are going to be central bank digital currencies in order for there to be instantaneous, costless payments domestically and potentially cross-border. Which would be to the benefit of citizens and businesses, and particularly small and medium-sized businesses, but all businesses. And the question is whether...
Real quick, he just literally described what Ripple is doing, or what the digital, I should say, the digital asset XRP is doing right now. And it's creating... less friction for cross-border payments. They're focused on small and medium enterprises, and so it's just, he's not saying the name, but he's describing it. Keep listening.
Could that happen? The answer is yes, it could happen. In fact, Mr. Haldane is helping to lead our efforts in thinking about how the various ways, and there's more than one way you could do it, and various avenues to do it. But the question is, if you do have that happen, does it make sense to do it on a coordinated fashion with some of the core central banks, which brings benefits in and of itself from a cross-border perspective, but happens to be a component of a more seamless rebalancing of how transactions are priced? Because, and I'll finish with this, it's not just about the financial spillovers, although those are incredibly important, and they're one of the reasons why the equilibrium interest rate is so low. And Dr. Galega, in another speech, pointed out that why the left-hand tail risk is higher. But it's the fact that a disproportionate amount of real transactions, purchases of goods and services, are priced in U.S. dollars, even when the two countries have nothing to do with the U.S. They don't touch the U.S. And as more and more activity moves online, the question is, what is the currency of choice online? And could the currency of choice online be better balanced between a basket of central bank digital currencies, which is not a new currency, but is a back-to-back of those? And that's the question on the table.
And we've seen him talk about, in a G30 paper article, he does talk about this, and he specifically mentions XRP in that document, and a lot of influencers have shown it, and so it's interesting. Now I'm gonna go here and show you this video because it's almost like they're on the same wavelength, Chris Larsen and Mark Carney, because you've seen this video, but it's worth showing you again because when you put it side by side, you see why it makes sense.
About the future of cryptocurrencies, where do you see the future of these digital assets, and maybe the role of Bitcoin and Ripple or XRP in that future?
Yeah, so our view is that these digital assets really become supplemental to the existing family of currencies, right? So every country still needs its own, fiat currency for all kinds of reasons that I won't get into it. very complicated, right? And I actually think that the big four, the yen, the euro, the dollar, the RMB, they actually, I think, come stronger in this world that we're going into, partially because of digital assets.
Okay.
That these digital assets actually contribute to a world that's more interoperable, where more people around the globe can get access to these big four. And most of global commerce is done in the big four. So I think you have a bifurcation going on. Those big four get stronger. I think some of the smaller currencies, maybe even more of the very small fiat currencies, become less relevant, maybe even disappear. A country could have its own fiat, but still use one of the big four. You have lots of
like
examples.
Montenegro, right?
Absolutely. But I think then where the digital assets fit in, like things like XRP and Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're kind of in that mid-range. They become, I think, like the Singapore dollar or the Swiss franc, and they become useful in kind of lubricating the world to make it easier for those big four to get in the hands of people all around the world. So that's useful. And then it might also be things like applications and devices that maybe primarily use one of those digital assets. So that's kind of the view we have. So I think in that world, countries should be less threatened by what's going on and see them as simply supplemental rather than a threat. Too much talk about it being a threat. Our industry has done a bad job in too much bravado and chest pounding.
And so once you see those two videos side by side, you start realizing the similarities. And the reason I've been invested in this is because it just makes sense. And all the components, what they're doing is actually tackling real world problems. And it's giving the real world solutions. And this is why I've been so adamant about looking at the fundamentals, looking at the use cases, the utility. It's really, really important. Now, to move on here, we see Anders Longberg posted this a while back, but it's good to revisit it. And he's talking about Bretton Woods and the future of money. And we see here that while the Bretton Woods system has long been discarded, today we find ourselves in a similar position as the Allied nations did back then, which he's talking about 1944 when the Bretton Woods Agreement took place. And he says the article says the end of the US dollar status as reserve currency is no longer a question of if, but of when. Interesting. Now it says the history of money itself. So this is what they're going to attempt to question and consider. The history of money itself, the overview of the short and long-term debt cycles, today's financial plumbing, the complicated relationship between the US and China, Bitcoin, and the promise of a new monetary system. Okay, so these are all things, and you've heard it before from Kristalina Georgieva about a new Bretton Woods moment. Okay, and we're reaching a point, a climax, where we're gonna have to, do a realignment, like they say here, the Bretton Woods realignment, August 11th to the 13th of this year, will be interesting to monitor. Now we know that central bank digital currencies are a possibility, and here we see that they're getting ready, and this is an old video, but again, I'm reiterating the fact, keeping it fresh on your mind, that CBDCs are coming. I don't know when, but it's a matter of when they come, not if they come. And this is just a reminder to tell you that it's coming.
Hey, Tyler, the Federal Reserve announcing it's taking another step at looking at the possibility of issuing a central bank digital currency, saying it's going to issue a paper. And that paper will be issued this summer that will focus on the benefits and risks of a central bank digital currency. The Fed's going to ask for public comment on whether or if it should do this thing and what the risks are. And Chair Powell saying in a video release that the Fed made available along with this statement that this represents the beginning of a thoughtful and deliberative process when it comes to thinking about a central bank digital currency. He does not say, for the record, the Fed has reached a conclusion to issue one. But here's some quick sound from what the...
Okay, and it says, and when they ask for public comment, again, I'll reiterate, it's a foregone conclusion that they're already in the latter stages of already implementing it. So keep that in mind. Digital Assets Daily. Now, in order to create a CBDC, you need to have finality, liquidity, and a lender of last resort. You don't have that in many privately created currencies. Let's open up the system and let private innovation make it better. And this is what Agustin Carstens says, and it's an old video. But again, let's watch what he says because it's relevant for today.
We have a very broad history of many different private efforts to come with private money to compete with central bank money. And at the end, what I described in my presentation is what happens. At some point, you need to have a finality. You need to have liquidity, intraday liquidity, and at some point you need to have a lender of last resort. You don't have that in many privately created currencies, and that at some point can be a problem. Now, if you apply that at the national level, at some point you will fall into that problem. And therefore, the issue is, why should we invent again something that works? Now, let's build on that and let's open up the system so that private innovation can make it even better.
And just a reminder of why you invested in digital assets, and specifically the chosen one, is because of this.
Some people have heard me say this before, but I'll throw it out to the audience. What is Interledger's total addressable market size? All the money. Nobody.
Okay, and that's just a reminder. Disregard the FUD, disregard everything. And here's a good reminder, and I found this tweet a great tweet. He says, in a bear market, the hype dies and you are forced to evaluate projects on real fundamental without taking hype into consideration. When you remove the noise that is hype, you'll make way better investments, and they will be a lot cheaper. And it's true. We focus on fundamentals here on this channel. We focus on what makes sense. Hope this episode has brought you some value. Like and subscribe, comment below. What are your thoughts? As always, I like hearing from you. This is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.